Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this, our webinar focused on the area of Mbombela to talk about the issue of the general valuation role, the effect it has on your property and the value, and therefore the rates that you pay. I am from OUTA, which is the Organization Undoing Tax Abuse, and I have the privilege of driving the CAN project, and the CAN stands for Community Action Network, where we engage with senior people in community associations and help them to do what they do better. But more about that another time. The focus of today's webinar, as I said, is on the slightly thorny and sometimes emotional issue of the process of the general valuation role, which has come your way and which closes in Mbombela for engagement with the municipality and objections, I believe, on the 31st of May. So I just want to outline a few housekeeping issues before I introduce our panelists. There will be an opportunity to engage with the panel, but we have a large number of registrations, which suggests that we will have a huge audience who actually go live. So if for now you could confine your questions to the chat box, we'll attempt to get to as many as we can. But it is important to know that this session is being recorded, and I trust that's in order with everybody. The primary purpose of that is so that we can send you each a link by email after the session is over, so that you can review proceedings at your leisure and look for bits and pieces that may be able to address some of the questions that you have, which we haven't managed to get to in the hour allocated. So please expect that from us once proceedings are done. So it's my pleasure to introduce our panelists. First of all, we have Pierre Duprier, who represents the White River Residents Association. Pierre, thank you for joining us. He has a specific interest in community affairs and is very well informed and will bring some local perspective to the issue of valuations and the effect on property rates as it affects citizens in his area. We also have a guest panelist who is TJ Marais, who's somebody who is known to many of you. TJ is just dealing with connection issues at the moment, and we expect him to join us shortly. But I'd also like to introduce quickly our executive manager in charge of our social innovation division, who is Julius Kleinans. The CAN project, which is my responsibility, falls within that division. And there are two other initiatives. One is a reporting platform in the hands of mobile device holders called Link. And the third initiative in that space is called WaterCan, which examines and unpacks the state of water, both drinking water and groundwater in South Africa. But we'll get to some of those issues later. The purpose of the webinar today is to examine the process of the general valuation role, which comes around every 4 or 5 years, depending on which cycle your municipality finds itself in. What it does is that it uses algorithms and formulae to re-evaluate the individual properties that fall within its jurisdiction. The idea being to remain up to date and current regarding property values, which are the basis on which rates are then charged. So this round of property valuations will trigger a rates adjustment, which will become effective from the 1st of July, which is the new financial year of all municipalities as far as rates are concerned. So in this process, many of you as ratepayers will find yourselves in a situation where you might find that the current valuation which has been offered to you is somewhat out of whack with the valuation that you believe your property has. Now, one of the key principles on which property valuations are done, and one of the key drivers from the municipality point of view, is that they are required by law to do a market-related valuation. And while I think that happens in some cases, there are many examples where quite a lot of those values are, as I say, disproportionate, and people find themselves with excessive valuations to what they perceive or believe their properties should be. So here to discuss the matter, I will lead the conversation and facilitate the webinar. I see we've just temporarily lost Pierre Duprier, and I'm hoping that he will be back shortly. Aha, there's TJ. Good afternoon, TJ. And I'm hoping to ask Pierre to spend a little time talking about some of the local issues in Mbombela in due course, but perhaps then we can reverse the order. So TJ, good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us. I am Tim Tyrrell, who's driving this webinar, and I have invited you, thank you for joining us, to share a little of your knowledge and your understanding of what happens on the ground in Mbombela as far as valuations and property rates is concerned. What we will be doing later in the discussion is spending a little time helping residents and ratepayers understand what can be done, because unfortunately, a lot of what we are dealing with here is driven by law, driven by process, and there's not much that we can do to deviate. But different from what some people perceive, there are indeed mechanisms which can be used in order to engage with the municipality to try and arrive at a valuation which is acceptable to both parties. And that's what we're going to be focusing on later on in the webinar. I just have a message here from Pierre Dupré, and I just want to see what his issue is. He's lost connectivity and he's about to connect on his cell phone, so we look forward to that. So TJ, I hope that's enough of an introduction. We have discussed what we're trying to achieve today before. So I wondered if you wouldn't mind giving us a little bit of perspective on what goes down in Mbombela and what the current feeling is. Give us some examples of where things are working and give us some examples of where they're not, because then we would like to offer some assistance to your ratepayers in order to be able to settle matters. TJ, over to you.
Thank you very much. I trust that everybody can hear me. It's a bit noisy where I am because I'm next to the road. Thank you very much for that thumbs up, and thank you for inviting me. I think most of us in the municipal area sit with exactly the same problem, though we talk about Mbombela specifically today. And what's not working is the local system. We can really sort of flesh that out and saying, what are we getting in reverse and in return for our rights and taxes? And what are we supposed to be getting? What is the private sector doing and funding versus what is the local government doing? And what is now lately happening is the total escalation of rights, property rights, which has come under your attention. That is just totally out of, people struggle to understand that with reason, because in the same street, you will have a big disparity between two properties that's more or less of the same market value all the time. And all of a sudden now, there's a huge escalation. I don't want to mention percentages because I might make a mistake, but it's definitely out of the order. And the question I ask, yes, so rights and taxes is important. And in Nelspruit, we do a lot without rights and taxes. So we've got We Care for Nelspruit, and I'm an activist for getting our community together to render services to the city with the money of the ratepayers and residents, where there's sort of a void. Because much of this money, as all of us know, disappears somewhere. And now you also someone just get we need more. But our services that we are offered with the same money is just getting smaller and smaller. But what we do in Nelspruit is we are working with public spaces, the entrances to the city, and with the partnership of the Kruger-Lowveld Chamber of Business and Tourism, we have been very successful in reviving a lot. So we've also revived the Ratepayers Association, or Resident and Ratepayers Association, because we have a constitutional right that is not defended or is not carried by the Chamber of Business. This must be carried as a separate entity. So we had our launch meeting and people are saying, yes, let's do this and let's get things together. So there's already a big movement just by this vehicle where people actually respond and appeal and question the valuation role that is just now been published. It's actually a fountain of wisdom that has been put out on our different platforms, how people can react towards that, how they can lodge a complaint, which most people are doing. And then the last point that I think is important is also, equality has become quite a big word in South Africa, but it's also, without going very political, it's, what are we getting for our R1 and what is other people getting for their R1, if I may use that. But there's a definite difference in the R1. It's like the joke that was going around. You still get 100 rands of petrol for 100 rand. But there's a definite challenge in that. So we've decided in Nelspruit to tackle the old, I'm talking about Nelspruit, we city of Mbombela, but we used to be Nelspruit, and the old Nelspruit is existing of wards 12, 14 to 18, and unite those into a body that will then speak to local government and tackle the issues that is concerning us to make sure that our rights and taxes are spent 100%. But we are still with the fact that the new valuation role is totally out of, it's like a pie in the sky, the numbers that's been published. And there's people that are talking that their actual rate in taxes has doubled, but their property is not. Hasn't grown, there's nothing. So it seems, and I'm saying it maybe I'm saying it tongue in the cheek and I'm cautious about it, but it seems like rights and taxes has become another way of milking the cow, and the cow is already dry. How much rights and taxes must we pay for the same services that we are not getting? And I'm pretty sure I'm quite aligned to that, to make such a statement. If we have services that we can say, yes, it validates the 2, 3, 5, 10,000 rand, yes. But at the current moment, it validates nothing. We see the money go and it goes nowhere. We don't get any return on that. So there is talks of, let me not use words, but there is talks of how will we go forward with this. Apart from appealing, apart from objecting, I think there's definite processes that we want to follow in Mbombela, Nelspruit, to say to the authorities and the powers, listen here, if you want more money, we need to see more of you, meaning more of the services that we paid for, that has just gone smaller and smaller and smaller. So they're biting off a cake that there's nothing left of. So yeah, that's what I want to say at the current moment. If there's anything that we want to add on or a specific question, I'll gladly speak about that. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. Thank you for that perspective, TJ. I think you've touched on something which is of general concern. I think it's probably fair to say that across the board, and particularly if one reads the Auditor General's report, you will see that this is borne out time and time again. We have a situation of decline where for similar or more rates and taxes which are being imposed on the population, there is a reduction in services. And just on a pure moral platform, that doesn't fit well with most people. So when the property valuation comes round and the role is executed, people are now becoming sensitized and are aware of the fact that, as TJ rightly points out, authorities tend to rely on a captive rates base in order to be able to maintain or even increase revenues. But they're going to have a devil of a time justifying that against a backdrop of declining services. And the conversation I had just earlier this morning with Pierre Dupré illustrates that very starkly, where there was an invitation to engage with the municipality to do a joint inspection of the fleet of vehicles that is meant to service the area and look after parks and fringes. It's a meeting that didn't go very far because of the rather dire state of the municipal fleet. So this is not a municipality bashing session. On the contrary, I think what we're trying to do is to promote constructive engagement. And where OUTA can help is to at least outline the process and to help people clearly understand exactly what is needed for them to be able to get some kind of decent response from their municipality. So I'm hoping that we will have the presence of Pierre Dupré shortly. I know that he's struggling with connectivity. They had a power dip which put his laptop out of service, so he's trying to get back online with his phone. But before we do that, I'd like to ask Julius Kleinans to share a few words from a national point of view. He has good perspectives. Julius, would you like to share your views with us?
Thanks, Tim. Yeah, I think this is a notion and an issue that occurs across the country. There's nothing new about it. Sadly, people don't know what their rights are and how to participate in these affairs. And our constitution of the country has been written as such, and our municipal legislation really deem us the shareholders of a municipality. But if we don't engage with the municipality accordingly through legislative processes, and I'm not going to get into too much of the jargon, but people need to participate efficiently, and this is one of those processes. Your valuation role is a means where people have the ability to have a say and ensure that the municipal affairs are in check. People didn't know this in the past. People don't know how to participate in it, and there's been ignorance in it as well. However, if you don't follow this legislative process and participate accordingly, you've got no say. If you don't object, you accept, and that's the big problem, which means July every year one gets a bill with new tariffs, higher charges, and then one wants to appeal it or take action regarding it, but it's too late, and no court will grant you that opportunity to oppose it if you didn't follow the processes that's legislatively required of you. So I think that is just in a nutshell, Tim. I think people want to most likely get stuck into the detail on, okay, but what do we do and how do we do this, and from a simplified point of view. And I hope that this session can help a lot of people. Thanks, Tim.
Okay, good. Thank you, Julius. And we'll get into that in a minute. I think one thing has come through here, and it is a bit of going off at a slight tangent, but I think it's important to note. We have in this group, and these are people who take the trouble to log on and participate, we have constructively engaged and active citizens who prefer to take the line of, okay, we've got to a point here where the municipality to whom we pay rates and taxes is not delivering the services which we believe should be coming our way. So let's get this thing under control and let us become actively involved and let us contribute in our own right, which is exactly what TJ is spearheading. And it is that kind of citizen action that we commend. And I'm not necessarily saying that that's a solution for property rates issue, but the fact that people are now beginning to shift in their perceptions rather than just saying, but I pay my rates and taxes, so therefore the municipality should be coming to the party. That's true, but it's not happening. And we will, if we sit back and do nothing, we will watch our environments and our living spaces continue to decline. So I commend those who take the initiative and launch activities and work that beautifies, maintains, and keeps our environments in good order. And there are many examples of those beginning to crop up around the country. So I'm pleased to say that Pierre is back again. Pierre, thank you very much for joining us. This time round on your phone, I believe. But you know the issues around White River and Mbombela as well as TJ does, but I'm sure you have a perspective and you have a view. So perhaps you'd like to share that with us quickly before I get into what can we do and what are the steps one needs to follow in order to be able to engage with the municipality on the current round of valuations. Pierre?
Thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity. It was a hair-raising couple of minutes there when I lost the link. We had a dip in electricity and it just went down. I couldn't get the computer backups, but fortunately we have cell phones. Yes, I do have a perspective, and so does the town. Our town is pretty much upset, and Mbombela is pretty much upset about the valuations and how it's being handled from the municipality side. And I think it's unfortunate that valuations have gone up in the way it has, because we've not seen any meaningful upgrade in our town's infrastructure. I'm also a property practitioner, and there are different kinds of values to property. You've got a sales value, which is the willing seller, willing buyer value. Then you've got a construction value, which is very much the same value as the insurance value. When you need to rebuild a house, for instance, there's a specific value to that. And then the municipal value, in my opinion, should be linked to the quality and the maintenance and things like that with regards to service. If there's no service upgrades and maintenance done in a town, obviously that impacts the municipal value. And that is the thing that I'm on about, is that I think we are being bulldozed into these highly escalated valuations of our town. It's not a fair thing to want to raise the rates and taxes, but the service levels and the infrastructure growth is not also upgraded. So I will put everything I can into opposing this valuation role that they've submitted. Tell us how to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think just to elaborate quick on that, you've touched on a very important point, Pierre, because the natural thought of property value is that it grows every year. You know, people have been taught in books and all this kind of stuff that it's a good investment. But you spot on, you know, crime in an area affects property value, water quality, the state of infrastructure, and you know, for a property owner and a business owner who owns a property, people don't invest in a country like South Africa. They invest in a community, in a municipality. You know, it's where you stay, it's where your business operates. It's so a lot of people have a lot to lose. And we're seeing, and it's very fascinating, in the city of Johannesburg, the same problem applies. You know, everything's deteriorating, yet they deem property value escalating. And it's not the case. People are getting less and less for their properties. But yet, in the city of Cape Town, things are actually working. And you see property value escalating exponentially and an influx of people flocking there. Yet the property rates there are charged at a lower rate than any of the other municipalities, and they're getting better services. So it's contradicting itself, this whole system. And you spot on, you know, there's a lot of factors in a municipality itself that affects the future of property value and security. Thank you.
Agreed.
Yeah, good. Thank you very much, Julius. All right, then, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I'd just like to introduce the next phase of this discussion this way. There are several things that can be done, I suppose. One is a collective action where one challenges a municipality or even the legislation which drives the general valuation role and the subsequent adjustment on rates. That's a long-term exercise and may be a little bit removed from the experience and the concerns of the average owner and ratepayer. So it's important to understand that one must engage and use the opportunity within the areas which are directly in your own locus of control. So the redress process and the opportunity to engage with the municipality is yours regarding your ownership of your property and the value that is attached to it. So I'm urging you, and we as an organization are urging everybody in the country to utilize that process. Unfortunately, and I certainly am not casting aspersions on anybody in the Mbombela area, but there is a general apathy that prevails in the country. And when these processes take place, it's astonishing at the number of people who do nothing about it. They feel aggrieved and they are concerned when, come the 1st of July, the next rates bill they get is a whole lot higher than it was before. And they say, well, what's going on here? Or why did they do that? And exactly as Julius said, by that stage, it's too late. If you don't participate and you don't lodge an objection and challenge the value, if you think it's out of kilter, then you have no redress in terms of the structure of the current legislation. So I'll just leave you with that thought. So on that basis, let's unpack what can be done. So let me then share with you how we would suggest you go about fixing it if you can. So the first thing we should do is, I know some of you have probably already engaged with the municipality through your municipal website, but here as OUTA representatives, we've laid it out for you and given you an opportunity to follow the processes that we outline as OUTA. So if you open up our website, which I've just done, can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Excellent, thank you. If you go to the banner at the top and you look on the right, you'll see a section which says property valuations. Click on that and then scroll down through that table which is presented, and you will see that there are a number of municipalities where we have offered you a link, and there right at the bottom, that doesn't mean anything in itself, there's a link to the Mbombela municipality. Click that and it will take you through to the Mbombela valuation roll outline that we have offered you as OUTA. So a little bit of introduction there. Every year we see municipal rates and service charges increase, but it's questionable whether service delivery matches the charges, much as we've been discussing. So the current valuation roll was released on the 27th of February in Mbombela, and the window for engaging with the municipality closes on the 31st of May. Please, 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 people, if you don't make use of that opportunity, the 31st of May is fixed. There's no chance of extending it. So if you've not lodged any objection that you want to lodge, you must do it before the 31st of May. So the first step in the process, if you want to find out where your property is, you click on the link and it will take you to the valuation roll. It's quite a large file, so it might take a few seconds to download, but let me open that up. It's a PDF, meaning it's simply a record and a hard record of the properties in Mbombela. So let me just expand that a little, and you'll see that there is an opportunity going through various different filters. Township is one, earth number is another, the portion is important detail, and then a sectional title unit number if you live in a complex or if you live in a shared space. That will give you, let me just move that for you. That will give you your property details. And on the right-hand side, you will see that they are suggesting to you what your market value is. So let me just expand that a little for you. And you'll, oh, you see that, okay. Unfortunately, this is not allowing me to give you the detail because it's now very small, but on the right-hand side, you will see there is a market value. So that's step one. That gives you what you need to know at the beginning. So then let's just step back and go back into the next step of the process. Residents must check their property valuations and submit any objections within the provided time frame. Property rates are based on these valuation and new rates based on the General Valuation Roll 2022, which ran from the 1st of July. And if you want to get an idea of what your property is actually worth and what your rates, what your rates will be, we've offered and drawn up a generic rates calculator so that you can use this device to basically get an idea of what to expect of the increase or the change in any rates that may be based on the new valuation. So in the first section, insert your current property value here. Well, I've shown you where to find it on the valuation roll. Put it in there. You will also see on that table that we've just looked at, there is a column which gives you the rates exemption. Different types of properties have a certain threshold below which you don't pay any rates at all. 100,000, 350,000, it depends where you are, the area that you are, and the type of property that you own. So fill in your rates exemption there, and the difference between the two will give you what appears in section 3, which is the rateable property value estimate. Please understand, this is a mechanism to give you an indicator. It's not cast in stone because there are municipal tariffs which are applied, which vary. So I'll see, let's just go back to the Mbombela. Mbombela website. Let me just open that up for you.
I've just quickly posted the property
okay.
rates policy in the chat,
Okay.
which basically has those tariffs in the residential, for instance, if you use the calculator, is 0.00824. So people can see that and do the calculation themselves.
Yeah, thank you for that. But just a warning to Mbombela ratepayers, when you look at those rates or the ratage, the randage as it's called, you'll see it expressed as a 0.8247 for residential properties. That is a percentage. So if you want to use it as a factor, you multiply your rateable property value by 0.008247, and that will give you your annual rates amount, an estimate of your annual rates amount. And then if we just go back to that table very quickly, it will give you an estimated property rates that you will be charged every month. It's not.
I think, Tim, can you quickly show them just an indication on the calculator? Let's say R1 million current value, and the exemption is,
and let's say 200,000 rates exemption.
And then if you said 0.008247.
0.008247. If we move on,
and just humor me and do the rates exemption 100,000. I think that'll be a bit more accurate for Mbombela.
Yeah, okay. So that would give you a rateable property value estimate of 900,000. There is your municipal tariff factor. That's been turned into a factor. It will be shown on the municipal table as a percentage. In other words, 0.8247, not 0.008247. There, your estimated property value per annum comes up as, oh my gosh.
That's the rates value for the year. So that will be 7,400 Rand in rates.
Okay, and then your estimated monthly tariff or monthly ratage will be 619 based on those inputs. So it's really just a handy calculator. I must emphasize that it is not cast in stone. It's an estimate, but it's going to be a pretty reasonable estimate to be able to give you an idea of exactly what you're going to be in for. So that gives us an idea of where we are. So then we suggest that you follow a 6-step process to get to the point where you can actually lodge an objection. So we've already touched on where you will find your valuation rates, and that is on that 15 meg file, which I showed you earlier, where you can actually find your property plus its municipal valuation there. Then the next step is to compare that new value with the value that appears on your monthly consolidated invoice that you get from the Mbombela municipality. If you think the discrepancies and the differences are too large, that is your trigger to go further with the process and to lodge an objection. Just let's pause there for a second. There may be cases where your property rate or your property value remains static, or I don't think there are many, but there are some where your property value will actually go down. Now, that is not going to affect you in a negative way because it shouldn't have an increased effect on the rates that you pay. But if there are obvious discrepancies, even if they don't work in your favor, I'll leave the decision up to you whether you choose to engage with the municipality to bring that discrepancy to their attention. Because one of the hidden purposes of this whole engagement process is that so that the municipality can keep their database updated and that they are basically presenting or in a position to present more accurate information next time around. But that is a side issue. Okay, so then the next piece of advice or the next step, if the value has significantly increased, you can object to get a potentially get a reduced value. If you think the new value is fair, do nothing, and the process will take care of itself. You don't need to engage further. But if you would like OUTA to help you, then may I suggest that you click that link, and that will give you an opportunity to engage with an independent property valuation company. Now, an important part of an objection engagement is to be able to say to the municipality, this is what you've told me my property is worth, but this is what I believe my property is worth. And that can't really be based on simply a personal view. It has to be backed up by evidence. And the way to get a decent, cogent piece of evidence is to engage the services of a professional in the property space. One of the people who do that, with whom we have an association, is a company called Lightstone. And if you visit their website, which I've just showing you in here, you can dial in your details and they will be able to online give you a property valuation of your property. So follow the prompts on the Lightstone website. I don't want to highlight that too much because these are not the only professionals in that space. There are estate agents, the larger ones in particular, that have a valuation service, and you might be able to get that slightly cheaper because Lightstone do charge you a fee. That is their business after all. But for 172 Rand and you're looking to have a significant change in your property valuation adjusted, it's a very small and a very useful investment because it will give you an objective valuation. So then, once you've done that and you have obtained a comparative valuation, then you need to go and find the relevant objection form, which you will find on the Mbombela website. And there are 3, because you have residential properties in section 1 at the top. You have properties other than residential or agricultural, which are essentially commercial. And then for farming community, there is an opportunity on section 3. So I assume, and let's, for the purposes of this exercise, accept that most of our listeners and viewers today are residential property owners. Just be careful here. You look at this green bar on the right-hand side, and it's a little bit unfriendly because it doesn't give you a prompt icon too readily. So you actually have to fish around very carefully in the bottom left-hand corner. And if you press on that and you find it, it will open up the objection form that you can then fill in. Quite a detailed form, and it asks for all the relevant information, including a supplementary schedule, which gives you the copy of the independent valuation, plus a section towards the end, which will give you an opportunity to actually insert a narrative, which gives your reasons for why you believe, here we are, that why you will believe that the value offered to you by the municipality is out of whack. So it's probably better, in fact, to write your own and attach it as an addendum to your submission, but you can offer your information on that form itself. One of the nice things, and I will say this deliberately, is that the facility to object is offered online in the Mbombela municipality. There are others who are a little bit more old-fashioned, perhaps, and have made it perhaps more difficult still for ratepayers to object because they have to fill out a form manually, produce a hard copy, and then go and submit it to municipal officers at designated points. This doesn't necessarily apply to you, although that option is open if you wish to do so. So if you choose to do that and deliver a hard copy to municipal officers, here's an important piece of advice. Make sure that you make 2 copies, and that when you deliver the copy that is to be submitted to the municipality, you ask the official receiving your copy to date and stamp your copy so that you can produce that as evidence, if necessary, later in the process, that you have indeed submitted.
May I jump in here quickly?
Yes, please do, Pierre.
I have the public notice calling for inspection document with me, and I, for the lack of listening in the beginning, I just want to make an exclamation on this part of it. They say there that faxed or emailed objection forms will not be accepted. Property owners that have not received mailed notices by 27 Feb are requested to visit the municipal offices. So
Okay,
the objections will not be, they will not accept emailed objections. You need to visit the municipal centers in the various areas with I suppose, hard copies.
Well, I'm glad that you pointed that out, because if we go back to the previous screen, there is an explanation at some stage, and I picked it up earlier because I had this exact point in mind. There was an opportunity to object online, which I now understand, given the recent notice, which doesn't appear on the website, or I haven't seen it on the website, despite trawling it fairly carefully. Thank you for that update. So there, my advice, in fact, becomes substantive. And if you're going to submit, then you're going to have to do it in person. And make sure that when you do, take 2 copies and get them to date stamp and give them an official municipal stamp on the one that you keep. And that will give you so a track record and a paper trail of what's gone down. So the other thing that is a little bit unnerving is that you'll see that the forms as presented on the website are dated 2018, which means that they're 5 years out of date. Whether that means that you can still use the current form, I presume you can, but it hasn't been updated and is not presented to citizens and ratepayers as useful and up-to-date information. So thank you for that heads up, Pierre. I was unaware, so that was a useful interjection. Thank you. All right, so that basically outlines what you can do, people. With all due respect, I advise you not to sit on your hands. Do not let this process pass you by. My key piece of advice is please engage sooner rather than later, because all too often these things tend to box up as the deadline approaches, and suddenly one finds oneself in a situation where it all comes unstuck. So we've reached a point now where I'd like to engage with our listeners, and I see that Elmarie has got her hand up. Elmarie, would you like to share your question? Ivor, will you unmute Elmarie, please?
Good afternoon. I just want to know this light stone. Are you just going to do it online, that they value your property?
Yes, that is correct. I spoke to a representative from Lightstone yesterday. It's an online service and they have national coverage. So no matter where you live and where your property is based around the country, if you supply them with the correct details, they will be able to give you an online valuation of your property. So they do not have on-the-ground local representatives in your area, but that online service is available to everybody. Thank you for the question.
Thank you.
There's another question from Errol. Errol, would you like to go ahead?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, indeed we can. Thanks.
Just to comment on that form that you mentioned earlier on the website. I'm actually looking at our street WhatsApp group from our councillor, Sanley van der Merwe, and she sent us forms which are actually different to those on the website with the updated dates on. So it's from 2023 to 2028. So that forms on the website, I think, are outdated. I think maybe speak to the ward councillor in your area or Sanley herself, and she can give you the right forms.
Okay, well, that's very useful. Thank you for that. I think it's an important point to note, because it then calls into question how that information is disseminated by the municipality. If they're choosing to do that through ward councillors, and therefore there's a human element, which means that it might not get to where it's intended, that's a problem. And I think the municipality needs to be challenged and called to account that all of the information that is required in this process should be available on the website. Julius, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No problem, Tim. Yeah, thanks. We got the new information and that link is being updated as we speak. So the real forms will go out on the email. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much.
The updated forms. Thank you.
Fabulous, thanks. I see there's a question from Rita. Rita, go ahead, please. Unfortunately, we can't hear Rita. Rita, perhaps if you'd like to drop your question into the chat, we can try and answer it that way.
Yeah, I think, Tim, it will be better if we can move on. There's still a process that you need to explain. Thanks.
Okay. So, Julius, would you like to take that on, please?
Yeah, I think so. So then, as Tim mentioned, the objection form, complete that. That the correct forms will be in the link, updated and sent out in the press release. Sorry, in the mailer that will follow after this session. And I think it's just important, as mentioned earlier, I saw in the chat as well that some folks only found out about this discussion today. Look, any property owner is affected by this, whether it's a business owning the property. I think even, if you look at the different categories of properties. So it's very important to share this information with your friends and family members and colleagues, so that no one gets caught out, by an unpleasant surprise in July. I think that's very important. And then just to echo what TJ, I think, mentioned earlier, it's extremely important for communities to get involved. All of us have our own areas of passion. As we speak, Pierre in here is qualified in the property space. He's passionate about that, and there's other people also. Some of us are passionate about the environment. Some of us are passionate about community safety. It's really important to participate. Even if you give half an hour a year, just do something and get involved, because as the future of our country, we believe, is really within the power of organized communities. That's where community building should start. That will also push out the disgusting debates regarding what politicians have to win favor and votes. We can break the barriers and build the bridges in our own communities, to hold them to account. And I just wanted to call on that, because I see there's some organizations I've missed the TJ's entity. I see that White River Community Organization is here. And please, folks, get involved. And this kind of initiative, such as we are driving now, will really gravitate into the change that we need in South Africa. People need to be informed, and people need to take action. Thank you, Tim.
All right, good. Thank you very much, Julius. I think this notion of community and citizen engagement is absolutely vital. We, within OUTA, and it is part of the platform on which this whole social innovation project was launched, is that we are dealing with what we regard as the sleeping giant. If you look at the service delivery value chain from municipality through to the ratepayer and the resident, it's arguable that the resident is the most important person in that whole sequence of events. So to use a business analogy, the municipality is the supplier, the ratepayer is the customer. The only difference is that you are obliged to pay the price that the municipality charge you, and that is reduced to legislation. But it then perhaps places an even bigger obligation on the municipality to deliver on the promise. They are also mandated legally and constitutionally to deliver those basic services for which we all pay. And it's vital that we hold our officials, our political representatives, our community representatives to account. And we do that through citizen power. And please understand that the more you are organized, the more you are integrated as community groups, the better it's going to work. So the more muscle you have, the more profile you have, the more official status you have, the more the municipality is obliged to listen to you. And I want to just plant a thought. We are dealing with what are commonly known as civil servants. Unfortunately, the civil service space has become very clouded with this issue of political rent seeking, with political favor and political one-upmanship. And it's completely inappropriate, because irrespective of what political party your representative in your area comes from, he or she has an obligation to represent your interests. And there is no matter in the wider sense that shouldn't be of interest and of concern to him or her. So they are civil servants. They are people who are there either by election or by appointment to serve your requirements. And it is absolutely vital that you summon and consolidate your collective energy into entities which are properly constituted, which have stature and status, so that those issues can be delivered and driven through to the people who actually supply, or dare I say, don't supply the services for which you're paying. So yeah, that kind of brings us to the end of our agenda, ladies and gentlemen. It's been very focused on the issue of property rates. We could go on forever about community action and active citizenship and all of the other things that go with it. But perhaps just before we close, we could have a couple of closing remarks and observations from our panelists. Pierre?
Yes, I was just going to put my hand up to get some attention. Anyway, yeah, no, thank you for this, Tim, Julius. It's really, really much appreciated. What I want to say is, you know, when you went through the objection list, it seemed very difficult. You know, there'll be people out there that will struggle to actually complete this. But what I want to say is, rather submit the document. Even if you do make mistakes, submit the document, complete it as far as you can. If you really need assistance, come and visit me. I can see if I can also help. But submit the document, even if you are not sure you've done it 100% correct, because it means that you've lodged an objection. You can always fix the mistakes afterwards if there's a mistake on the document. Just do not just leave it. Do something about it. Lodge your objection and keep a record of the signed one when you hand it in. I'm most willing to assist where I can, where there are people that really struggle with the paperwork. They can come visit me, phone me, visit me at the office, and I will be glad to assist them in completing. I've got the documents here with me as well, so we can assist in doing that. But we need to
Pierre,
do that.
Where can they get hold of you?
Well, my business is Connection Properties. Now, unfortunately, I have to say that. I didn't want to do that, but it is
That's
where
fine.
our office is. And they are welcome to visit us in center of White River, and we will assist with these documents as far as we can. I'm more proud of being part of the Power of 8,000 here in White River. Everybody knows that. We've got a WhatsApp group, so let's talk about that on the Ratepayers Association WhatsApp group. Ask questions, ask for help. Do the same on the Power of 8,000 group. Let's talk about this and see if we can. There's a huge group of people on these WhatsApp groups, and I'm sure I will not be the only person willing to assist somebody. We have an extremely helpful community in White River, and it's such a blessing to be part of the unity that we have in White River. So if there's any uncertainty, ask the question on the WhatsApp groups. Assist, please, with the objection of the valuations, and I'm sure there will be help out there.
Splendid. That's a very kind offer. Thank you very much. I see there is a question that was missed along the way from Stanley van der Merwe. Stanley, would you like to just pop your question to us, please?
Thank you. Am I audible, Tim?
Yes, you are. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Firstly, let me just say thank you to OUTA and to Power of 8,000 for arranging this discussion. I think it's very important, and I think that in most instances, our residents do not know how to follow a process or what process to follow. So I'm very grateful for this. Thank you. I've got one or two questions. Please assist me and know that I'm on this platform as a ratepayer myself. So that is why I'm posing these questions. I think firstly, you know, we spoke about market-related valuation. What is deemed a market-related valuation? I think that is the first thing. Secondly, it would seem, or if I look at the valuation roll, the draft valuation roll for the city of Mbombela, at least almost 2/3 of property valuations have increased between 25 to 28%. Now, there was a comment on the chat group from Samantha that said that anything above a double digit is deemed irrational. And that for me, it screams concern. That is the first thing. Secondly, is the fact that you know, no valuations can be sent electronically. It can only be dealt with in person. We have got 2 people behind a little table at the Civic Center in Mbombela that is supposed to be dealing with everything. Now, we've gone through this process, you know, every 5 years, and we know that the volume of objections that is going to be put forward on this draft valuation roll, the municipality does not have the capacity to deal with it. So that objection period is going to, I would assume from past experience, will take anything between 12 to 14 months, after which, if your objection was not heard and you want to appeal, they appoint a service provider or a private service provider that deals with the appeals, and that takes another 12 months. What the concern is, and that's really where I would like some expert advice on how do we advise or deal with, advise our residents and how do we deal with it, is from the 1st of July, after obviously the 31st of May, objections close, and not all people have been informed, and we do the best that we can to try and keep them informed. But from the 1st of July, these rates become applicable. And I must be honest, you know, I'm sitting with just personally over 50 complaints that property values have been increased, some between 50 to 100%, especially in our commercial sectors. Those rates are being billed from the 1st of July. And, you know, only at the end of the objection period, may they or can they possibly, if they went into it in the long run or went for it for the long haul, they will maybe get credited if they are lucky. So my concern is that it's clear that the blanket approach in the percentage that was added on the property valuations is not a fair approach. It can't be. There's no way that anybody can justify to say that your property value has increased to 30% or that it will be increased within the next 5 years. Considering our State of the Nation address with our finance minister, made it very clear, economic indicators does not show that. So what is the regulations that the municipality has to apply to, or that they have to adhere to, that they have to adhere to ensure that the valuations are done fairly? And what is the probability of success to apply for an interdict to enforce these absurd, absolutely ludicrous increases in rates in the short term? Do we have any ground to stand on, or are we just, you know, with our backs against the wall and we just need to take it as it is? And after 18 months, we maybe, if we're lucky, we can get the money back, because we have got several commercial clients and residents that the valuations are absolutely crazy. Can we deal with it prior to this being enforced, or are our hands tied? Thank you, Tim.
Yeah, good questions. Thank you very much, Sanley. Just to answer your first question, and that is, how are the municipalities charged with arriving at a decent valuation? The principle that overrides the whole process is that it must be market related, and market related means based on the principle of willing buyer and willing seller. So what would a willing buyer pay to a willing seller for this property now? Now, whether that relates to what actually gets spat out at the end as far as the valuation roll is concerned, that is open for debate, and I think in many cases it is clearly not the case. So that is how municipalities are instructed to conduct their general valuation roll. The issue of 25 to 28% increases, well, yeah, that's excessive. Let's not use that term. That's a bit emotional. It's a lot. But if you feel that that applies to you and that there are issues that you need to address through this, the process that is available to you is the current process that's on the table. And that leads me into answering the next question. And I'm sure there will be views from Julius and from Pierre. But if you're looking at a group action, let's call it, that is going to take time. There are clearly some indicators that there should be some collective movement, and this is probably national, not just in Mbombela, that we should be doing some work to bring about reform in the whole valuation rolls process, because it can be manipulated, and we have seen examples of how it has been incorrectly applied, And in terms of the redress that's available, many citizens simply do not have the opportunity to be able to stop that from happening. As far as the actual current valuation role is concerned, I'm going to answer that question just slightly indirectly. We had a very close engagement 2 years ago in 2021 with an organization called RAG, which stood for Residents Action Group. It was a community of citizens in Ekurhuleni on the Eastern Rand. And they were faced with a similar situation, perhaps even worse in some cases, where property rates just went through the roof. They just went mad. Their group, the RAG group, was led by a very competent and passionate and energetic attorney in her own right. And she offered what I thought was some incredibly sound advice, which turned out to be very successful. And that was, if we get a collective action together and we drive it as a legal case, it's going to take forever, it's going to be expensive, and it has a questionable outcome. So what she did as a community leader, she rallied as many citizens as she could. And there were 30,000 on her database. However, how many actually engaged, I'm not sure. But the upshot of it was that the municipality was absolutely inundated against a lack of capacity, which you've just pointed out, with this incredible flood of objections, to the point where they said, we're calling time on this one, and they stepped back and they redid the valuation role, and much more favorably in the cases of many of those people who lodged those objections. So by collective action, without necessarily going the formal route of launching a class action or a lawsuit, there was a very successful outcome by pure citizen energy, which made the municipality change its mind or improve the offering, so to speak. So whether that's a possibility through your very creditable and already active citizen groups, Power of 8,000, the Residents Association, Mbombela, I believe, is just in the process of reforming, went through an inaugural event last week, the White River Association. There are entities which might be rallying points around which you can conduct this kind of action. So I don't know if that answers your question, but there may be other views. Julius?
Yeah, no, I think that's quite spot on. You know, one has to take it case by case basis. There's so many different methods, and I won't be able to advise on this right now. But if the valuation role was not conducted independently, if the methodology was not efficiently applied, there's so many factors at play that can result into the percentages that you've just shown, which gives you the ability to potentially legally challenge. I think the method you just described is probably the best. You know, if get as many possible people to echo the need to challenge this, that it's been deemed irrational. You know, a quarter of a value, you know, of your property in escalation is quite significant. You know, I think any good property investor would have bought half of Mbombela if that was the return on investment. But anyway, that's not the case. I think there's definitely something to look at. The real challenge here is to do this quite quickly, because I would suggest that one needs to find the facts, get the community mobilized, and appeal to the municipality not to implement this valuation in their budget, which is obviously now in June, you know, end of May, June, that kind of period. Because as soon as that budget has been approved, they are budgeting to generate this revenue, which puts us in a completely different challenge that you need to now go and undo. What is advisable is, should there be a challenge on the 25 to 28% and even more escalation has been mentioned, and you get the amounts of people behind you, and you do put the municipality on terms and say, listen, until you've resolved this, we don't mind paying the 8% or whatever, you know, in an increase, because we know the municipality needs to be generating revenue on this. But we will not pay more until you've resolved the issue. And I think those are the kind of discussions one needs to go into. But every case and every scenario has got its own merits that you need to look into. Pierre, your side?
Yes, there's just an interesting thing if you go onto FNB's site, they've got a property barometer where they give annual house price growth, you know, from year to year, in the month, year to year. And I'm just looking at the one for April now, and it says the annual house price growth moved lower in April. The FNB house price index growth moved slightly lower in April, averaging 3.9% from 4.1% in March, revised up from 3.7%. Price growth appears to have stabilized in the last few months. So, you know, FNB talks about 3.7 year on year house price growth. How can Mbombela action 25, 20%, 30% growth in value? I mean, just FNB statistics is it's thorough statistics. It's based on real sales. It's based on real property values and on loans that was generated by FNB. It's not a thumbsuck. It's a real statistics that's out there. We are not even close to 5% year-on-year growth for properties all over South Africa. Never mind White River and Nelspruit, where our streets are full of potholes, where we have to beg, steal, and borrow water to drink, where we have power outages, not just because of Eskom's failure, but because of maintenance and you know, lack of maintenance, lack of infrastructure. It just doesn't add up, you know. So I'm quite sure that there will be quite a movement among the people, especially the ones that have received ridiculous increases in their property value. We must stand together, submit our objections, and help one another to do as many as possible and to just overload them. And as you said, Julius, we need to take a stand and tell the municipality that this is not fair and we are not prepared to pay these outrageous increases. I think we've got a foot to stand on, and that we've got enough power within the citizens to be able to get this ball rolling in that direction.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Pierre. I see we've gone a little over time, but I see the number of participants hasn't dropped, which is always a good indicator. So thank you for staying the distance, those of you who are urged to move on. We're nearly done, but there is one thing I just want to leave you with. Just be careful when you're calculating your property rates. While 25 to 28% sounds very alarming, is that a 28% year on year, or is that a 28% cycle on cycle? Bear in mind that the cycle is 5 years long. So it may be that increment over that lengthy period as opposed to one single year. But nonetheless, 28% over 5 years, I would invest everything I have, including my shoes, into property that would give me a 28% return over 5 years. I think that would be absolutely amazing. So if you'll forgive me for being a little bit flippant, if the municipality are valuing your property at some of those outrageous prices, the first thing you do is go and speak to your municipality and say, right, I'm offering you the property at the price that you pay and you can have it today. Or that the price at which you valued it and you can have it today, and I guarantee that you won't get some very favorable responses. So thank you very much for your contributions, everybody. Pierre, thank you very much for being our guest. TJ, I'm sorry he's had to move on, but thank you very much for the input that we got from him. Just to reassure participants, we will be sending you a link which will give you a recording of this session so that you can listen to it at leisure and unpick and zero in on the bits and pieces which are necessarily pertinent to you. Please be assured we are seeking to engage on an ongoing basis and more with community organizations like yours. And we are very keen to offer any assistance that you may require in order to become organizations which are more effective still. So good luck in your quest, individually and via organizations. I hope that you are successful. We will be following your progress with great interest. Thank you, Pierre. Thank you, Julius. Thank you. And thank you to all our participants. Have a great afternoon, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Take care.